Hello and welcome to Labour Lens. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week edition of the program, we'll be discussing about the issues that labour centres are faced with, especially the politicization and marginalization of labour centres in Nigeria. We also have stories for you. We will be right back. It's the 17th annual Emmatan School organized by the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC). Workers here are from different unions across the country. Speaking at the opening ceremony of the event, the NLC president Ugboaja reaffirmed that organized labour will resist any form of increase in pump price of fuel because any hike would affect motorists, household, transporters and Nigerians generally.
The concept of accepting the regulation, hook, line and sinker, anchored on import-driven price model is not something that we can accept. We have said that without mixing words. If you say we are pushing through our throat to accept the regulation on the basis of importation, basically there will be no end to price increase. Even the issue of saying that once you deregulate without having the capacity to refine for domestic use will bring down the price of PMS is not correct. Labour have done a lot of studies. Out of the OPEC countries, we are the only country trying to adopt this IMF imposed model of actually the regulation on the basis of import-driven price mechanism. That will not be good for our economy.
The former General Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers (NUPENG) and the board chairman of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies, Frank Kokori, urged organized labour to fight manipulation and corruption tendencies masquerading as fuel subsidy. They want labour leaders to be up and doing and fight corruption in the land.
Labour is supposed to be the tribune of the people. The whole corruption in this country, Labour was supposed to take it headlong. Let me tell you, it was the day Abacha locked me up when he captured me in the midnight. And he took me to Obama prison. The pump price of a liter was 2 naira 70 kobo. And I remembered in those days, there's no way the military increases a kobo in the pump price without consulting the union, especially NUPENG.
The Minister of State for Labour and Employment, Festus Keyamo, said government is still disposed to dialogue with organized labour on the subsidy removal.
Government did not just say we are just going to increase petroleum products and then did not think at all of the masses. That is a proposal that takes into cognizance the fact that there will be some kind of ripple effect on the masses. So I think that with what government has said, it's not cast in stone. By the time we sit down with labor unions and they think that we should tweak it a bit to be more embracing or to, make it in any way at all to ensure that we accommodate the interest of the workers, government will be prepared to listen.
The Director General of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labour Studies, Issa Aremu, spoke about the need to train and retrain workers.
The 17th edition of this Emmatan School shows that NSC is living up to its expectations. NSC is not agonizing, it's not overwhelmed by those challenges, but NSC is really keeping faith to educate its members. My chairman, sir, you remember that the first good job you did was after the governing council. The first governing council meeting that we had in Ugboaja, you led the delegation to Nigeria Labour Congress. And it was there that Commander Ugboaja promised that this Emmatan School will return back to Michael Imodu. He has kept faith with this.
It was concluded that research and documentation are key to the operation of labour centres.
2016, the then Minister for Petroleum, Ibe Kachuku, told us that if our refineries were not working by 2019, that he was going to resign. In sometimes 2018, he also came to say that the petroleum product had been completely deregulated and that market forces would be allowed to determine the price. And some of the questions some of us asked then was that if the products have been completely deregulated, what's happened to, why do you still have the equalization fund? Why is there bridging costs? Why is the price, the same in Lagos and in other parts where the product lands in Lagos and then you have to truck it? So who is paying the trucking costs? So all of those questions were left hanging and nobody answered them. And at that time also, Ipman complained that it was only an MPC that was importing product because of the fluctuation in forest market. And all of that, we allowed it to fizzle out. And recently, immediately after the 2019 election, if you remember, they jacked up the price all in the pretense of, oh, look, it is the market forces that was the product had been completely deregulated. Now come and said, you can no longer subsidize with 1.8 trillion naira because it is unrealizable. But that in place of that, you want to share 5,000 naira to 40 million indigent Nigerians. A lot of questions begging for answers. Who are these indigent Nigerians? What will be the criteria for determining the 40 million indigent Nigerians? Are you going to share the money the way you share 9-point-something billion to indigent Nigerians up north, and at the end of the day, people that were supposed to get it didn't get it? Or are you going to share it the way the president was sharing the conditional cash transfer during elections to market women, or the trader money? And yet, at the end of the day, the traders are still poor the way they are. Or are you going to share the money the way Festus Keyamo shared 20,000 for youth in the 772 local government areas, and yet we still didn't identify those that got the money?
The federal government has actually sent a message out that come hopefully next year they will be hiking the price. My perspective about it is the non-transparency in the aspect of the subsidy that even the government is paying. I feel liberalizing and let's have the actual cost of what it is might just be the way out. We've asked them to go in the area. They said they want to deregulate. We've not got value for it. And we've yearned seriously that they should put in place the refineries. You see, it's going to get tougher because the fundamentals are not being addressed. And what is the fundamental? We cannot have raw materials and go ahead and process it outside while we'll depend on those other people, knowing fully well that foreign exchange plays a key role when you're bringing some of these goods. So federal government coming to tell us, I think as an individual, it's just for us to brace up for the worst time. Once that is done, that they remove the subsidy, because we are not even getting the value of the subsidy that they are saying. So much has been set aside, but what are we using it for? We still go about borrowing and doing everything. So let's pay the actual cost of what that is. Well, maybe that will open our eyes to put pressure on them to see how they can build refinery.
On the profile interview segments this week, I will be speaking with the Nigerian Labour Congress General Secretary, who just graduated from the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, KURUJAS. He spoke about administration in the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Labour Trade Union centers in general. He spoke about the challenge of unemployment in the country and the need for government and employers of labour to have a synergy to ensure that this is reduced to the barest minimum. It's good to have you on the program. It's been solid 1 year since, if not more than 1 year since we last spoke. Congratulations to the one of the brandest MNI that NIPS just produced. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything that you think you've learned in the last couple of years that will probably impact in the work that you do?
Yeah, clearly it was a great experience actually. Every year the president gives the sect a topic to research on that would be helpful for national development. Over the years, it's been specific topics, specific direction. This is the first time the president is giving, you might call it ideological, philosophical, but the theme for this year was getting things done. Policy and program implementation. So it wasn't like it was on local government or environment or manufacturing or industry. No, it's getting things done. Policies and program implementation. So how do we get things done in Nigeria? So for you to do an in-depth study of that and do comparative analysis of what is happening across the globe, because we had a global tour, we had an African tour, we had a state tour, we had institutional parastatals tour, and all of that to try to get a bearing. So you can't come away with such and you don't get impacted on. And the icing was the very profound positioning of the president with regards to our work that was submitted to him, and he practically gave the marching orders for our report to be put to use immediately.
I know you're a barrister professionally, so of course there are lots of expectations on what your impact or your input would have been. But coming from the workers' perspective, getting things done, was there any time that there were conversations about the workforce in Nigeria?
Now, clearly, it's the workforce that will get things done. Policy, yes, can be from the big wigs, but clearly we also came out with the understanding that part of the challenge we had been policy initiations that come from up rather than growing from the base. So clearly the role of the workers, the role of the working people, the role of the populace, the role of the people was central to the diagnosis we were doing. So clearly the workers came up strongly, but ironically you could say I was a lone voice because it was me alone from the trade union movement in the sector of about 85 people. But I did have clear support because issues of humanness, of humanity is universal. So no matter how you think you've grown, you have brothers, you have sisters, you have uncles, you have cousins, you have nephews, you have neighbors, you have friends, you have workers that feel the brunt of non-implementation of faulty implementation of policies and programs. So clearly we got along very well.
Okay. Moving forward, there's been a lot of statistics recently as regards the rise in unemployment, especially youth unemployment. With your maybe exposure, is there any matching order that can be given to ensure that this is reduced to the barest minimum? For those that are even in public service, we see a situation whereby many people are actually leaving the service and there's no new intake, and we even find out that those that are in the system are even overstretched. So unemployment, youth unemployment in Nigeria, as the General Secretary of the Nigerian Labour Congress, what is the policy framework? Now we're talking policy and strategy. What is the policy framework to ensure that, this is probably, there's a strategy towards being intentional about reducing this to the barest minimum?
We put forward to the president, and that clearly the youth bulge needs to be taken care of. It's a time bomb, and this time bomb could blow for us to blow into progress, for us to blow into a brighter future if we properly harness it, or it could blow for us to disintegrate into nothingness, into abyss. So, but it will pay us better for us to blow into the positive by really taking charge and putting the youth bulge to use. And it's not rocket science. No nation had developed on the directive or imagination of others. No, you develop on your own imagination, on your own environment. In NIPS we call it scanning the environment, and you need to scan your environment and then find your strong points, and the strong point we have is our youth population. So rather than see it as a burden, rather than let them waste away, we need to harness them. We need to put to use our next level of value addition in all our areas. So you don't mount diversification. No, you act it, you live it, you get the people to own it up. And it's only when the people own it up that that policy makes sense. But if you sit on your high horse and say, we were promising our youths, and then you think it's by giving handouts, no. They have to get productive. So clearly that is on the card.
Technically, what can be done aside synergy, aside collaboration? Are there other things that you think needs to be done to ensure that we have more youths gainfully employed or probably using their hands in terms of doing business?
Yeah, it is, like I said, it's a function of getting transparent and focused. If you get the youths, if their skills are being thrown up in terms of the entrepreneurial skills, then you give them the enabling environment. People are not going to hone their skills if there is no power. People are not going to hone their skills if there is no security. So there are basics that you need to provide as government for the individual to then blossom. And for us, those are the baseline. You need to have that in place. So clearly, the issue of security is key. The issue of energy, the power base is key. And you then have to develop it internally. There is not going to be any use importing everything you need, and then you borrow money and you use the entire borrowed money to also acquire things from outside. So the entire money goes off again. You need to grow. You need to grow from the bottom. You need to appreciate what you have. You need to be proud of what you have. You need to be proud of what you are generating. And clearly the youths are leading in that direction, and they need to be encouraged. So we need to pay real wages to keep the people. The idea of pretending you build a $30 billion rail line when you cannot pay railway workers minimum wage, it's sad. You know, there must be a complete package when you're planning. It doesn't make sense that you have a 30 trillion naira investment to be managed by workers that are based on maybe just a 700 naira net salary wage for about 2,000 of them. It doesn't add up. So you need to have your priorities balanced. You know that this high impact infrastructure needs to be managed by highly impacted individuals.
Looking at the issue of trade unionism in Nigeria, as an administrative person, I would like to know your view about this current trend of victimization of workers, especially when they want to unionize. There are so many unions that have made significant progress to the extent that those that are even working on contract basis are part of the union, which in turn means that at least decent work is being practiced. But right now, as we speak, that's not happening anywhere. In most of the sector that even brings more money into the country, that offer key services, which we will say are essential services. There's been strike here and there, a lot of agitations and more. But specifically, what would be your message to the government, to employers of labor, towards ensuring that workers are allowed to join the unions?
The challenge you have is we tend to want to pick and choose what to get out of modernization, what to get out of the real world. In the real world today, dictatorship is not in vogue. In the real world today, impunity, feeling that you are all and all is not in vogue. Cooperation, consultation, coming together is the watchword across, whether in the world of work, whether in public service. But we still have people, because of the way their businesses came about. If their businesses had been grown from the scratch, they won't be antagonistic of the workforce that helped them grow. But when you see a man who was basically a councillor on a wage of 50,000 a month, and after 2 years or 3 years of answering local government chairman, he builds a 5-star hotel, he looks at his workers disdainfully, because he didn't grow with them. What he did was drop a structure from the air, and he doesn't understand. So clearly, the truth is, even the current president of the United States, one of his key statements at the takeoff of his administration was that the workforce, consultation with the workforce was going to be key. That he's going to encourage collective bargaining, he's going to encourage the multinational big businesses having a conversation with their workforce to help create the real world, the world that has empathy, the world that revolves and takes human beings as human beings and not just as a factor of production. So clearly that is the direction to go. And the new world of work, particularly when you understand that we're also going into the world of work where people don't even have to leave their homes. COVID had made that possible. So you need to be humane to be able to relate with a worker you're not seeing on a daily basis. You need to have a normal wage to keep him being part of your system. So clearly the direction is not the archaic way we are doing. Even in our structure, in private conversations, I see it. There is this determination to break the will of the labor unionist rather than understand the ideology or understand the principle that drives him. Rather, people are interested in discrediting him. How can I prove that this labor leader is driving a good car? That means he's not a comrade, because a comrade is supposed to be driving a smoky car, forgetting that it's workers that produce the car that you call a car. It wasn't produced by management, it was produced by the working people. People have more interest in confirming, did I see that labor leader wear an agbada? Whoa, he's no more a labor leader. People are more interested in how do we discredit him rather than how do we solve the issues he has raised. Rather than take the issue that ASU is raising, rather than take the issue the railway workers are raising, you are interested in finding out, does that professor have his child in the public school? Does he have the railway guy, did he buy a new shoe yesterday? No. Have you paid his salary? Have you paid his wages? The energy, the move you are pushing to discredit him, to follow him, to show that he's not what you think he has said, if you put that in solving the problem, the world will be a better place.
So finally, there's this issue of collective bargaining agreements disputes, in the sense that the government and workers come up with an agreement, the government signs, workers sign, then probably there's maybe 14 days or 7 days for implementation to start, or a couple of months for implementation to start. But the trend now is collective bargaining agreements will be signed. The workers would meet up from their own bargain by suspending the strike. But we realize that 3 years, 6 years, 7 years, status quo still remains the same. It's not a perfect world. We know that the economy is not really booming. What strategy do you think the government can actually put in place when they can meet up with their own side of the bargain? So this issue of always workers always wanting to go on strike, perhaps it will be reduced to the barest minimum.
The truth is we're still having people in government that have refused to understand that they are servants of the people and not KBCs, with due respect to traditional institutions, but the concept was that the KBC could do no wrong and his word will be law. But in the world of work, it's democratic, and the government collective bargaining is a global concept. It's a world best practices situation. It's unimaginable that you sign an agreement and without implementing not a single item for 9 months, and you wait for the worker to threaten to down tools again so that you can come and renegotiate, it doesn't show seriousness. In responsible claims, whoever was involved in that needs to resign, because our government functionaries operate on the level of no accountability to anybody, not to the appointing agency or person, not to the people. If not, how will you explain to your chief executive that you signed an understanding born out of your conclusion that this was possible, and then you're unable to deliver? It means you have failed. But the truth is, we want things to work. And for things to work, people must be honest, people must be transparent, people must be sincere in drawing conclusions. When labor people put facts on the table that makes you sign agreements that you can't dispute, and you then sign agreement, and all you're doing is let them go, let's see who will implement it. But at the end of the day, you buy up machinery upon machinery you keep at the ports, wasting away. Some you will install not to be used because there will be kickbacks and 10% tax involved in that. But the real people that will do the work, you have not settled their issue. If our universities were functioning properly, you won't be going to China to look for workers. You won't be going to China to look for technology. China didn't come to Nigeria to look for technology. They developed in-house, and we have enough manpower to develop. With the strides our people are making when they leave the country, it's clear we have capacity. You see our medical personnel, they will tell you no secondary health institution is functioning. It's straight from primary to tertiary. But the secondary ones that are supposed to be managed by states in most places are not functioning. And people see it as right. You will hear a senator who was once a governor telling you that he had just finished refurbishing a health center in his senatorial district. This is a governor who couldn't do it as a governor. Now he's priding himself as a senator without executive powers. With legislative powers, he is now renovating a hospital. You see how ridiculous our people get. They leave the real issues and they're chasing shadows. So clearly it's to get people to do what is right. The people who will tell you will have no money to pay workers are being chased by EFCC for hoarding 19 billion naira, but workers are not being paid. They are hoarding 21 billion, 60 billion when they leave office. They're chasing them around. But these are people who told you that it was impossible to pay minimum wage.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.